Okay, my wonderful friends. Finally, mainstream is starting to engage in some of the things that they really can't explain. And one of them is these parallel microtunnels in the rock defy geological explanation. And there's many, many, many anomalies in geology that they just attribute to magma. Throw magma at it and it'll cover. No, this is biology. These microtunnels, they go along with each other every different direction. They stay right next, parallel. I'll show you that, their findings in a minute. It just supports what I've been saying. There's nothing that isn't biology. And this is a chunk of biological material. I don't know what it's from some kind of creature. But you can see that everything runs parallel to each other. And they all have to bring nutrition with them and blood. So the filaments run right next to each other in a lot of cases. In other cases, they crisscross and do all kinds of things. But what they're talking about is the ones that just go straight parallel, side by side. I have no explanation whatsoever how that could possibly happen. Let's look at this article. All right, let's just read this together. This is from earth.com, and they're trying to figure out why these parallel microtunnels exist. Say geologists have recently documented bands of perfectly parallel millimeter scale tunnels carved through solid marble and limestone, a pattern no known geologist process can explain. No geological process can explain why this would be in solid marble and limestone. Now remember, marble and limestone, I will tell you what that is in a minute, but it is specific to mud fossils. And if biological in origin, the tunnels would mark the first known example of organized rock boring pattern of this kind in ancient stone. It's everywhere. So they're saying in marble and limestone outcrops in Arabia, the tunnels appear as tightly aligned rows that run in the same direction and stop abruptly at fracture surfaces. All right, so they run just straight together, and then all of a sudden, blip, they're gone. And there's a fracture surface there. It's something else takes over. Well, I think I can explain that. All right, so they're just a whole set of parallel lines, basically tubes. And they don't cross and do any of that stuff, and then they stop abruptly at a fracture. Now, they say structured patterns in the stone, calling the features micro burrows, tiny tunnels etching inside rock. Team reported lengths of about 1 to 2 inches. Along the fracture planes, these bands could run about 33 feet, and erosion later exposed them at the surface. Well, viewed from the top, the openings looked like evenly spaced pores, and none of the tubes split, crossed, or merged. So they're looking down at it, and they're just a straight across pattern of basically holes. Jagged cracks usually branch and intersect, so the tube sets point toward an unusually controlled process in hard stone. That's the key. Remember this. This is in limestone and marble. Those are the two things that create tendon. These are tendons. And that's why they run straight along each other's. That's what tendons do. And they have tiny little micro channels in them because they need fluids to flow through there. That's what they're looking at. All right, they're saying that these microbes could have crawled along the gradient, always heading toward richer chemistry. Well, that's not the way. Well, in my mind, no, that's not true. All right, I'm going to show you exactly what they are in 1 second. They say why the rows stay parallel. Why would they stay right next to each other and go every different direction like this? says each tube was far wider than a single microbial cell. So they could be floating around in there in a big tube, basically. So the maker likely worked as a community, not a lone driller. So they're thinking a whole bunch of things drilling this way, and they all stay away from each other and go down make their own path. As that community dissolved, the surrounding carbonate nearby rock would lose easy nutrients, creating a no-grow buffer around every tunnel. Microscopic ring-like structures along some walls fit that picture of outward growth over time, then retreat when the food ran low. So they're talking, some of them have blood vessels, it sounds like to me, coming off of an artery. Now, if specialists can link these rings to a known group, the tunnels could become a biosignature, a pattern that hints at past life. Well, I think they do. Let's take a look at it. Okay, here's where you really got to understand biology and chemistry. You see what this says here? Somewhere it says it in here. Collagen. Here it is. Collagen fiber. It's your collagen. Collagen is what this thing is made of, and all that's a really tough material. It doesn't need any nutrition to speak of. These tiny little tubes would be running through here. Yes, they're going to be running all through here because there's got to be some moisture flowing back and forth here so they can slide among themselves. This whole thing is a sliding gooey mechanism, and the fluid that's in there, you see this coefficient of friction, that means how much scrub there is to something. Steel on steel is 0.74. Listen to this now. When you get down to synovial joints in humans, they're 0.01. And when you use them under pressure, they go down to 0.003. That's almost nothing. It's the lowest of any friction lubricant there is. Synovial joints in humans. Basically, these are synovial too. So we have all the little things running, straight lines. There's going to be tiny little microfibers, holes in between every one of these, because after thousands of years, the soft parts have washed out or whatever. They can come out where these are just never going to stop. They're just hard. That's why I just tell you, collagens and kerogens, they're the building blocks. They are the heavy duty jobbers, and they make tendons. Tendons are just as tough can be. All right, so my claim is everything is made out of these biology. So what is this right here? What are these little blocks? These little chunks, you see them? All running straight together, all running parallel, and there's going to be little tiny micro spots in between them, and they're all blocks. You say, what is that all about? Those are tendons. These are tendons. You see, tendons, collagens. They're made out of collagen. These are little tiny, and tinier blocks. And when they all go in a series like this, they make up a tendon. And they run side by side. So and there's going to be microtubules running in between every one of these. Because we're talking about tendons that are, every one of these blocks is this big. Some of them bigger. So there's going to be little microtubules, yes. And this is collagens, yes. And they are the toughest things that ever existed, yes. And they are marbles and limestones and granite and all the toughest stuffs, yes. And this is an electron microscope, the tiniest shot of this. And you see the different colors because there's 28 different collagens, and each one of those little fibers does a different job. Some of them are stretched tight. Some of them are all kinds of different jobs. 28 different collagens. So that's what tendons are. I mean, it's just what it is. And these things go on forever, like Giant's Causeway and all that stuff. They didn't build a road to go fight Cool McFinn and his, or whatever. It's the body of a creature. And they get smaller and smaller and smaller down to these tiny little fibers, and I think that's where we are here. It started out, the mind cannot conceive of the sizes that we're talking here. Your mind just brushes right over it until you stop and say, let me think if this guy could possibly be right. Because I'm going to show you right now the things that, in my mind, cannot be disputed and need to be discussed if you have any concern about reality. Let's just go with that. All right, this is Quetzalcoatl. I am going to be going, there's a very, very long story now about him. I've started to understand what to look at and what happened in history according to their ancient texts. So that's one of them that we're going to be going over, but that's Quetzalcoatl right there. Now there's another one that I've shown 1,000 times at least, who is Typhon, who was also written about in history. Quetzalcoatl was written about. This was not some just all of a sudden that popped up somewhere. No, these were all documented, and we're going to go into the documentation, and the same thing with Typhon and all of that. Now here he is again. Typhon runs all the way across North Africa. He is on the maps from 1375. They show him here with his throat cut right there, just like it is here. And these are all dragon scales. Now you have Google Earth. You should be able to come up here and look at this yourself. You see these? You see this? Those are dragon scales. You see them? That's the bottom of his throat. And it runs up here. This is all, the fluids that run out from a decaying body. And his throat runs all the way up. And here's where he discharged at the giant fish, which is exactly what was written in Apollodorus 1.6.3. The gods saw him rushing at them, spitting great jets of fire, and they turned themselves into animals to try to get away. And this one here didn't. And I believe he's Aries or might be Pisces. There's some discussion about that. But he did get hit by the stuff coming out of Typhon's beards, basically out of the beards. This yellow strip here is the killer stuff. That's the killer. And it goes all the way from his gut, way down from his gut. All the way down in here is where it's all festered up from. And it runs right up along his throat. And then it splits right across here. See it yellow up here? And then it splits right across. And then it divides. You got a white looking stuff comes here and makes this crazy looking thing. And then the other side of it goes this way and makes this nasty, nasty, nasty stuff. Two different substances. I don't know what to say. There must be some kind of a little organ in there that divides them. You see it? I mean, it's quite obvious. Now, I'm going to go over all this again and again and again and again and again until somebody starts talking about it. That's a gigantic fish. It was all written about. Read Apollodorus 1.6.2 and 3 and all in that area. And it talks about Typhon was so tall that his head often brushed the stars. He had the thighs of a human. He spit great jets of fire and whatever stuff at the gods that changed themselves into animals. I mean, how much more do you need? He had a red fiery eye. You know, his eyes were red, flaming eyes. Other than that, he was all unkempt and disheveled, and what you see right here. And he's laying here dead in the desert. Runs all the way from here back to here. And you can see his tail is the same thing. Dragon scales in here too. You see the scales? And when you see all this, this is where he must have got caught right there. And all they're bleeding out in this area. You see, this is all dragon scales. He runs the whole North Africa. And that's what they did say in the ancient text. He was his head off and brushed the stars. So someone please prove me wrong. Okay, I think I've made a pretty good case for how these little tiny micro tunnels occur. It says until these lines of evidence converge, the tunnels will sit in a careful category, suggestive but not yet assigned to a species. It's a biology. If confirmed, such structured micro-burrows would not only reshape understanding of Earth's deep biosphere, but also refine how scientists search for life elsewhere. It's everywhere. There is no place elsewhere. Lessons for rover missions is to look and see what they find. I can show you stuff that they missed everything. Missed everything on Mars. Mars missions keep returning to the subsurface idea because rock can block radiation and hold on to traces for ages. They are looking for microbes. We don't need to look for microbes. We can see the body parts. A deep biosphere, life that lives far below sunlight, can survive on chemical reactions in water-filled rock and sediment. If microburrows prove biological, they would show another way that subsurface life can reshape rock in a readable pattern. It's already readable. That kind of trace could help rover teams decide which drilled cores deserve the most careful follow-up back on Earth. I've already looked at Bennu. I know exactly what it is, and you will too, and I'm sure you do if you've been watching me. It's a heart. When they took that sample out and brought it back, it is 100% certainty that it's a heart. It's got all the sarcomeres. It's got the membrane. It's got the cardiac muscle. It's got the phosphate it's got everything. And it looks like a heart. You can't miss it. It's unmissable. All right, where the story leads? Well, this set of tiny tunnels has pushed geologists and microbiologists toward the same task, deciding whether life wrote the pattern. Well, why don't you decide whether I'm wrong or I'm right? I'd like to just have it discussed and put off to the side. Say, oh, Roger's wrong or Roger's right. If Roger's right, we got a lot of thinking to do. If Roger's wrong, forget about him. But show me your evidence, because I am going to show you mine. And I have. Even with no DNA to test, and that's wrong, they got plenty of DNA to test. The evidence shows rock can preserve organized traces for millions of years, and that is useful. All right, so they just don't understand these patterns that arise because they are biological. They just can't get it around their heads. Life is gigantic and it's everywhere. It's minuscule, bacterial size, single cells, all the way up to planet size. I mean, I'm sorry, that's just a fact. See, there it is right there. These are bands of muscle and connective tissue coming up to abrupt transitions, which are where the biology connects. I mean, it's all everywhere in your body. There's just a million spots where it comes up and boom, bang, dead stop. And all of those require some kind of nutrition. They just don't live there with nothing. So all of those have little tiny microtubules running through them. Every one of these little fibers. And the fibers, they're everywhere, just like I showed you on this. There are a ton of them. Every one of them is separated from another one by basically a membrane sort of thing. And the fluid goes through that membrane. And if they're connective tissue, which they are going to be, because they're talking about marble and limestone and probably granite too. That's going to be your collagens. And those are the ones that are going to have the microtubules, and no big blood vessels. You're not going to see a lot of that. You're going to see some here and there. Very, very, very few. See that? Those are nothing more than tendons. And this is where the glue is. And I have stuff here in my shop, same exact thing. You can see, but in microscopic. I can see them coming up and glued straight across. Same thing as this. And they're flat as a pancake. They stop just dead, boing. Just basically like, I got one here, basically like this. That's the all scruffy stuff which we just saw a second ago, and these are all the tendons. Of course, this is, very small compared to this, which is somewhat larger. All right, I think I've done my job at presenting my evidence. Now I'd like to have somebody say, no, Roger, you're wrong because this or that isn't right. Well, this is a stone, and these are muscle sarcomeres. Here's the surface of the stone. It's cut like this. And this is like skin and a little floppy stuff, and you get down to the muscle. And this is where the blood services the muscle. I have so much evidence on this. There is nobody can deny what I'm saying. And I also have the evidence on asteroid Bennu that they came back with. And it is, you can see the muscle, cardiac muscles, and they're quite obvious. I mean, it's just so obvious, unbelievable. And every single detail of the human body, the chemistry, the DNA, the RNA, everything's there. And the look of it and everything, you can see the valves in the heart. It's no question. It's 100% certainty. And that they will not allow me to make contact with them. So this is what the problem we're up against, is denial of reality. Now I'm going to be doing some, the next ones are going to be killers, man. Whew. Stick around, because it's easier to fool people than to convince them they have been fooled. And boy, have we been fooled. So stick around, because the next one's going to be talking about Quetzalcoatl. And we're going to look into the documentation on him and where he is. I know where he is. He's right there. Runs up the whole East Coast. That's his shoulder. And he's spitting out into the Gulf, and wait till you see what I have to talk to you about. This stuff is, here's the key. I have so many people that I consider fellow researchers. There are people just send me, what do you think of this? Hey, did you see this? Hey, did you see that? And a lot of the stuff, I can't see everything. But I do when I get this stuff from these people. It's like this one here, Scorpzilla. These are all earthquakes. And anybody that's been with me understands who Scorpzilla is. And another one I found today that is down in Peru here. They find in all these metal spheres, and they can't figure out where they came from. I say we got hit by Venus right here, and it pushed all that stuff down here and ended up dropping metal spheres all over Peru. I'm telling you, we need to start thinking all again, start over again. I'm just going to tell you, here's what they're saying. Rare glass blobs in Brazil reveal an ancient impact, but something's missing. Where's the crater? These are the glass balls. They came out of the sky and ended up landing in Peru. That's the way I'm seeing it. All right, we had an impact which created the Grand Canyon. Pow! And that's why we're down in the guts. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in the guts. You'd be on top. But in the Grand Canyon, we're down inside the bodies of these creatures. Vermilion Cliffs is nothing but a bloody mess. And it pushed all that stuff down here. And it must have somehow got all the way down to Peru. The glass blobs coming out of the sky. Because they must have been, when you look at them, I originally thought they were iron meteorites. But they're glass blobs. Anyway, we got a lot to talk about. And we're just going to keep talking until they start to realize a lot of the things that we were told aren't true are true. And they at least need to be investigated. Maybe they're true, maybe they're not true. But I think a lot of them are. And that's where we're going to be discussing if you stick around with me. All right, love you all. Thanks. Bye.